Hi guys, and welcome back to A Dive into the Realm. I'm your host, Prophet, and today I'm joined by Legacy League admin and co-founder, caster for multiple games including Paladins, Brutal Fissure org owner, and Paladins enthusiast, Ronnie WuffieGG Nielsen. How are you,
Howdy
man?
ho, folks. Thank you. I'm very good. Thanks for having me. I'm very
Glad to
excited
have
for
you.
this.
So am I, and I'm glad you can make it. So I want to start off with a question that I like to ask all my guests.
Yeah.
Where did your name come from? So where did WuffieGG originate from?
Okay. I was named Woofy to begin with without the GG, but I found out that I wanted the GG afterwards to be like more of a, broad, like I'm in esports GG.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Woofy is actually a name I've taken up for, I think it's about 7 years ago. I made up that name of myself because I like dogs and I like my own name, so I just kind of mixed those two together and made Woof and Ronnie work together to Woofy. Uh, so it's
Solid,
kind of just a
solid.
mix of my name and my my passion of dogs because I really enjoy dog pictures, dog videos, more than cats even.
Wow, more than cats. Interesting, interesting. And yeah, I get the GG factor because if you look at my Twitter and stuff, obviously I have it as well.
Exactly. It's just the esports initials TT. There we go.
Yeah, yeah, and can stand for so many things. It's a great initial. Alright, so what started your enthusiasm for Paladins?
Oh yeah, I think it was all the way back when Rory Drybear, he announced that he was going to be the lead designer of Paladins. I had played a little bit on and off during 2015, but first really took up the game 2016 when I think it was OB28 or something that came out when they changed their UI with the hexagonal alt in the middle and all that. When they changed on to that point, they also included like, hey, Drybear is our leading designer now. So I was really a big fan of him all the way from before he even got involved with Iris when he was just streaming Smite and playing Smite on his YouTube channel. So like he was a big factor of my interest for Paladins.
Good answer. So does that mean you weren't really that involved in the closed beta scene, or?
I knew a few players, but I wasn't in the scene per se. I was trying to get in touch with players like back when the Fate tournaments were the only thing that really was back then. And I do believe that I only really talked to Elvin Path back then, and Sasla, and those two have been here forever. So
Yeah.
that was just I just think it's my connections were slowly built up from the get-go because I wasn't really involved in any of the scenes in Hi-Res. I was trying to, but it didn't go as well as I would have hoped.
I see, I see. So, kind of circling around to something I introduced you as, which is Legacy League admin and co-founder. I can imagine that might have been quite a big step to start a kind of league like that, especially since it's going into, I believe it's second or third season.
It's going for its second season here.
Second season.
Um,
So was that
and there
really a big
will
step for you?
huge. Like it was going from just being an aspiring caster to be a hired caster. It was my first hired job ever in esports, so it was a huge step for me because also together with the the bonuses of being hired, I also had to do much more effort to make it flawless and not really say, yeah, I can wait with this to another day. I had deadlines. I had to make sure every single team was updated with info. I had to contact the owner and another co-founder, GGJ. We had to communicate a lot, and it was a big thing for me because I got really stressed out, but it was very valuable experience in my opinion.
Okay, and just a little, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, But so to kind of clarify, you are being compensated for your casting work and your kind of admin work by Jay, or is that what you basically said? Like that's why it also makes it kind of different.
Yeah, it feels more like I am directly involved instead of just working for somebody.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
feels
okay.
more like I'm part of something instead of just working for someone, and that's, in my opinion, the bigger picture of why I work there.
I mean, I think it's MLL and the other parts of the Legacy League are being run well, so I mean, it's working out, I suppose.
Thank you. We're really trying our hardest, so we're happy for any kind of positive feedback we can get.
So you even mentioned casting there. As a caster, right? What do you find most difficult during a broadcast?
If I have to be honest, it is teams not communicating with the caster. When you as a caster is also the broadcaster, you need transparency between the teams that you're supposed to cast and, of course, the caster. The teams need to communicate, and I've experienced multiple times where we have to wait 20, 25, maybe even 30 minutes for getting just game one in a best of one going because the other team has one AFK every 5 minutes. And that's the hardest, most difficult thing about casting. That is not so much that these issues happen, but that you keep your positive energy for set casting. Because if you're run down by annoyances, then your casting will pretty much be, pretty bad.
Yeah, you'll lose your energy and the cast that will affect the casting.
Exactly.
Do you think those problems are caused by something like a language barrier in the EU region, or?
Well, there is a huge language barrier in the EU due to so many different countries and tongues we speak. So it is harder for EU to get something rolling smoothly compared to maybe NA, where like 90% of the population just speaks fluent English, right?
Yeah.
So I do believe that it can be one of the reasons, but mostly the reasons are just, just bad planning on the team's end. But it's okay. Most teams are new at it, and they need to know the do's and don'ts, and they only need to do the mistakes once, and then they get, corrected.
That's good. So you would say that most teams don't have are not repeat offenders to not communicating.
No. It's only once, and then I have the feeling that people understand that you're saying it as much to save your own skin as it is to save theirs. So
Yeah.
it's like, please keep it on a respectable level, because else you will be disqualified and, in worst cases, banned from the tournament itself. And nobody wants that. Neither the caster nor the team.
No,
So.
obviously it's bad for both sides.
Exactly.
So what do you think? Because I know that a lot of people in the scene would communicate kind of a frustration at casters for not doing their research. As a caster yourself, what is your opinion on that?
Well, I think it is a very important aspect of casting, especially if it is what I would call long periods casting session, like a season. For an example, a league.
Yeah.
Where you have to see the same players over and over and over and over again. You need to know these players. You need to know them by hand. You need to know what they play. You need to know what they... You need pretty much past, present, and future of every single player that plays in the league if you're casting it. It's not as important when we're talking about smaller open tournaments like ESL or something, when there's a Magistrates Cup. The caster doesn't need to know every player, but they need to know at least some background knowledge on those they know. If they know a player, they can't just say, hey, he's good. They have to say why. They have to give examples of where they've seen this player perform well. So that's maybe the biggest challenge for casters. That is being in an environment where they can research, else they need networking connections in terms of knowing all these players by firsthand before casting.
But so who do you think that comes down to? The casters themselves for needing to be able to network, or the lack of a kind of hub of information in Paladins at the moment?
I think it has improved when it comes to information in the Paladin scene. If we just take a look at the esports Paladins webpage, is now way better. You get all the leagues info. You don't only get one league's info. But I think it's mostly up to casters to research, because it's their job to talk about these teams. It's their job to promote these teams in the games. So you cannot put all the effort on everybody else when your job is to talk about these people. That would be it's kind of contradictory if you don't research, because then you're saying to both your viewers and as well as your organizers, those you work with, your colleagues, that you don't really care.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you guess
okay.
what I mean.
Yeah, you say it's kind of a sign of like disinterest, like you're just doing this,
Yeah.
but you don't actually care to put in the effort it requires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
okay.
don't show passion, you just show that you can do your job and then go home. Pretty
Yeah.
much 9 to 5. A classic, I'm just here to get my money and go home.
Yeah, no, I get that, and that's also kind of the frustration I think from a lot of viewers in the scene right now. So it's good and comforting that you share that frustration, because that means that you yourself obviously will try to not fall into that kind of trap.
No, I have done it before and I will never do that again. Oof.
Yeah, community feedback can be harsh on broadcast, man.
Yeah, of course.
So
I have more negative than positive at this moment in my DMs when it comes to my casting, but I will still go
Yikers.
on.
I mean,
Never give up.
I think you're doing a good job to kind of throw my personal thing in there. Sometimes I'm like, oh, Woofie, please, no more puns. Come on, man, you're better than this.
Ah, come on. A few puns has never hurt anybody, except for people's ears.
This is true. This is true, and I think your casting definitely improved since I've seen it since the beginning. So, in my opinion, right, you're doing a damn fine job. So, should that be noted?
Thank you so much for
So,
that. I
what
appreciate it.
what got you interested in casting in the first place?
That's another person in the Paladin scene that actually draw me to grow interest in doing so, and that was Vox, Hyrius Vox. Back when he was very new, he was community tournament caster, just like I am now.
He used to kind of quickly interrupt for the people who don't know, because this has been quite a long time ago, and I'm guessing maybe Woofie still remember this, but a lot of people probably won't. Vox used to cast, I believe it was ESL weekly with Jay.
Yeah.
So with
and
GGJ.
also the Fate tournament. The Fate
I don't
tournament
actually-
also got casted by Jay and.
I don't remember
Vox.
when the Fate tournaments were. This is just a lack
That
of my
was
memory.
early
Though.
2016, very early 2016, like February or something along those lines.
I mean, yeah, it's slightly in my brain. I'm like, oh, I remember that, but then another big part, it's just all blurry, man. It's in the scene too long, you know.
I don't remember.
But yeah,
What year is it?
please continue.
Yeah, yeah. Vox was such a brilliant caster that I thought to myself, I love entertaining. I love streaming. Why don't I mix that together as a career choice? I like this guy. He knows what he's doing. How about I ask him for pointers? And yeah, from there it's just all history. Like I just contacted an esports league system or a brand here in EU called Esports Wall and said, "Hey, could I cast your tournaments?" And I got in, and from there on, I started casting.
I remember esports will always being very open to casters. I believe, personally, I also used to cast like a couple weeks, although it was nowhere near as long as your run there.
I was the most consistent caster there.
Yeah,
for
no, I think
a
you
year.
were, yeah. Yeah.
Or something like that, because I was streaming every week for, I think it was 4 months before I had to take 1 day off. And they were very impressed with that, because apparently nobody else knows how to work normal hours. Never mind.
Yeah, and also
That's
because
a total different discussion.
and also because I remember at the time you were one of the people, and I think you still are, where I believe you actually are also you cast and broadcasted at that time, which a lot of people could just code cast at that time. So that's also something that's like made you in a way very wanted and unique for the casting scene.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
That being able to broadcast and cast at the same time makes you able to cover two spaces in one. You don't
Yeah.
have to search that long. It's like, hey, we have a caster and he can broadcast. Get in here.
Yeah. So, kind of moving away from the casting thing, I kind of want to move
Yes.
into your position and how it influenced you as a Brutal Fissure org owner. And with that, what
Yeah.
I really mean to ask is, Brutal Fissure is no stranger to some internal drama in the past. So, you as org owner, how do you deal with this?
Well, it depends. In my opinion, it's a case by case situation. Like we take every single dramatic situation at a time. We don't take it all in at once. If it gets to a point where it's everything at once, we normally just restart, press the press the
Yeah.
reset button on a team if it's going absolutely downward spiral. But to be honest, the way we deal with it is either showing that we respect them and they can talk as much smack about us as they want to, and then we're the better people, and that normally works. And the other, that is where we get to a point where they are literally forced to be blocked because they're going to, lengths of harassment, pretty much. Like harassing the org, every single player in it, the owner, the casters, the graphic designer, so on.
Yeah, which is always a sad point if
That's
things have
just
to
a
reach
one
there.
block button away.
Yeah. But I can imagine that this is quite hard for you to deal with as a person. So how do these kind of internal dramas affect you directly as like a person?
It's a mix of frustration and hopelessness, because sometimes you feel that it's your fault, even though that many other directions point towards somebody else being
Yeah.
at fault. But I am pretty much the head of the brand, so I have to put every single bad situation on my shoulders. They are my burden to bear. And it affects you. You become a little bit more angry during everyday life. You can get easily ticked off by small things in life. It's mostly just frustration that runs around your body when you have to deal with that often. When it's only once in a while, you can say, yeah, screw it, go on. But in this very case, like when it's really, really bad, there I wish I had a time machine and never got that person in to begin with.
Yeah. Because I
So I could have,
remember a period which I believe is like, I'm not quite sure, but I believe it's about 1.5 years ago, where you were in a state of just a complete stress all the time. Would you say that was your roughest time as org owner?
Yeah, I was multiple times at my doctor to be checked, and I had high blood pressure. I slept very little. It was just a lot of negative things in the org, together with my life outside
Yeah.
of esports. That was just a domino effect. It just destroyed everything within my mind, and I started going into weird habits I shouldn't go into. Um, yeah, let's just say that I wasn't in a I was in a bad place, but it wasn't the worst thing that happened with the org, or the worst thing I had to deal with.
No, but was it, you'd say it was not for the orc itself, but for you as an orc owner, was it the worst place you've been in?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to see that, as far as I know, you've kind of really moved away out of that phase and you're in a good place now.
Yeah,
That's good to see.
I believe that I am.
So, I guess this is kind of a double question, possibly, but what is the worst thing you've had to deal with as drama related?
Yes. Okay. The worst thing that I've had to deal with in the org has been when we were about to make an League of Legends EU West team in Brutal Fissure. People that followed the Twitter saw some teasers for it, and they knew exactly what it was and went crazy. But what happened was that we had 2 players. They were signed, both of them. But one of them didn't go through. Like he got like immediately kicked because the other guy didn't like him.
Yeah.
And that resulted in him contacting all of his buddies all around the globe to downvote all of our posts on League of Legends forums when we were searching for players. And I got banned on the EU League of Legends forums. I got banned on multiple League of Legends Discords because he pretty much just started rumors about me being a scammer, being a liar, saying that I would pay for salary but not giving any money, even though that it's strictly emphasized in all of our rules that we don't have salary in Brutal Fissure. So it was it was a tough thing to deal with. In the end, we needed to get a hold of a Riot employee to talk to him and make him, go away, keep your distance, because it was practically harassment. He was harassing me online because I said this guy is a signed member and you were about to be signed, but he has had second thoughts. You are not going in. That's not my fault, and I'm sorry it happened, but we have to follow the rules of the brand. And that resulted in him going kind of aggressive at me. And,
that does sound horrible. Because let it be noted that Woofie is in no way a scammer. He's a very honest man who cares a lot for every scene he's involved in, and he very much tries to help his player any way he can. So, yeah, that sounds horrible, man.
Well, it's over now, so I can just take the sweat off my brow.
Did that kind of steer you away from the League of Legends scene forever?
We're not touching that for the time being until there's some kind of a standard going on, so we can ensure that we don't get people that will stir up trouble for not coming in. Yeah. Because that has not been a problem ever in Paladins, where somebody hasn't gone through tryouts and they go crazy and starting rumors. That has never happened in Paladins.
So you kind of actually led into a kind of segue to my next question, because as you said, you don't pay out salaries. Well, you can't offer salaries, which is it safe to say that's because your org at the moment, at least, is too small for you to be able to safely do that?
Well, I would be honest and say it's because I am the only one that owns and runs the show, and I don't really have the capital to give people a salary. But we're trying very hard to build up to a point where we can get sponsorships and actually build up the brand to a full-blown organization. Because as of now, it is an organization, but it's mostly a brand because we haven't built up to the point of being an organization in partnership with others.
Kind of similar to Asterix back in the day.
Exactly. Asterix was a great example because Brutal Fissure and Asterix was really closely related to each other, both in terms of scrimming each other, sharing information about how to run an org, coaching each other's teams. We were like doing full-on buddy there. Yeah. McDuck saying, "Hey, I want to try out for Brutal Fissure," and I'm saying, "Hey, I want to take over Asterix." Oh, yeah. But Asterix survived, and we got a lot of good months out of that. But we ended up getting McDuck over on Brutal Fissure.
Yeah, I remember that,
2016.
Man. McDuck, a DPS player, right?
Yep, and he was also a brilliant off-tank. So we were really happy about him. A really good guy with a great sense of humor and actually really good call-outs. Back then, he did really brilliant call-outs. I don't know about now.
I don't think he's played in ages. I think he's been busy with work, to be honest. But that's unrelated. So,
but who hasn't?
Yeah, true, man. So how is it for you as a small orc that's been in the scene for so long? Because you've mentioned Asterix, which sadly is no longer involved in the scene or active
Mm,
at all, I think. So how is it for you as a small
no.
orc that's been in the scene for so long to compete with bigger orcs? And I don't just mean orcs as in like NIP, obviously, which that's a whole nother
No.
level, but even
Yeah.
smaller ones which we've seen in the past, such as WASD.
Yeah.
How do you manage to compete with those? And do you think you can manage, or is it kind of in a way an impossible battle?
I don't believe it's an impossible battle. We have competed on equal footing with many good teams back in the day, bigger orcs. For an example, PCL 2018, we had our PS4 EU squad in, and they were competing against Flashpoint, they were competing against Cyclone, and at one point, they also competed against
Yeah, but I don't mean
Radiant.
like
Radiant on the NA side. So Radiant,
yeah.
Cyclone, and Flashpoint are the mid-tier orcs sizes
Hmm.
that are actually way bigger than us, you know?
Yeah, but I
But
don't
they're
mean
considered as a mid-tier.
in a way as your players in that kind of team aspect, which still impressive performances on your console team. Not to take that away from them, but I mean,
No.
how do you as an organization in trying to sign players compete with the bigger orgs? Because as you mentioned, you in a way lack the bigger
Oh,
capital that they do.
I think that I misunderstood the question then. But yeah, what you mean is that how we're drawing players in,
Yeah.
and the way we draw players in is mostly how professionally built up I have made the org from the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. They always know exactly what they're going into with requirements. There is a rule book with very specified rules so they don't get confused
Yeah.
about anything. There is a form you have to go through. There's a big, like, it's a whole process compared to other places where you just say, hey, I want to try out, and you get into that Discord server. We
Mm-hmm.
have a very strongly built base
Yeah.
that we're just expanding upon. And in my opinion, I think what we offer that many others don't is that we try to cover as many aspects as possible, not only
Mm-hmm.
growing you as a player, but also as a professional in sports, or just as a professional in general. How do you act towards others when you're a professional, as well as understanding urgency, like arriving on time for practices,
Yeah.
all these kind of things.
So you
We're
kind of
very focused on keeping a stable base for every
yeah,
team we
in
own.
a way, you also teach them how to be professionals in the scene
Yeah,
in that
yeah.
aspect. But then the question still kind of stands where how do you deal with the fact that with pulling in maybe even some bigger teams and some bigger players? Because, for instance, even an orc like WASD could most likely guarantee their players jerseys and salaries if they would qualify, which I'm not sure about jerseys, but salaries, as you've mentioned, you sadly lack the capital, which is understandable.
Yeah. About the jerseys, we do have a design, but we have to remake it because we're changing our design around
Mm-hmm.
um, lately, and we will be trying our hardest to pay for these jerseys,
Mm-hmm.
um, so the players doesn't have to pay anything, because that is actually cheaper for me than, for an example, giving salaries to every player,
Yeah,
than instead focusing on money pooling and figuring out a way to give them their jerseys, and give them something to represent them with, and also showing them that we care about them. We
yeah,
want to invest in them, just like we've done with other teams that needed entry fees for tournaments. We've
yeah.
paid those.
Okay, so you think in that way and kind of doing that and also training them how to be professionals, you think you kind of get people to set aside the thought of, oh, I need to be paid on a salary. So you think you pull them in through different means.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I do believe it's the way we draw people in, is that we do so many other things except giving salary, that
Yeah.
we're kind of a learning package that you can get for free,
Yeah.
a stepping stone for some, but for others it's a home. So I'm satisfied with that.
Well said. Well said. Recently, your interest seems to have shifted to the console scene, both in casting wise, and I think in the future we'll see a bit more of that. And organization-wise, as you mentioned, with the PCL team, which performed great, I'd say. So, why have you made this shift? What attracted you to console?
First of all, it's an untapped market. It's very hard nowadays to find people that cover esports in console or broadcasting esports at a certain quality. You can't find the same quality for, PC community tournaments as you can for console tournaments. Console tournaments are usually not really that high effort. There are not really that much effort put into it. And I feel that I'm a hard worker and I respect people that are able to play well on console due to the fact that, in my opinion, I feel it's way more difficult to play the game. So I really respect that. And I feel they need to get some recognition in order for their scene to blossom.
Yeah.
They need some recognition. And I
So,
want to give them that.
would you compare the kind of described infancy of the Paladins console scene to that of the Paladin scene only a couple years ago? Is it similar or is it still different?
I would say the console scene is worse than Paladins was on PC for 2 years ago when we're about 2 years ago when we're talking about scene. Because the main problem is that it's a very split camp and it's a very close circle as well on console. So there's not that many new teams forming ever. It's pretty much the same teams just rotating players around until some of the teams win. And that's nothing like the old teams of the Paladins era in 2017. That was a lot of very committed teams that kept themselves together for long.
Yeah, I see that. So, do you think only this close circle is the biggest struggle and problems that the console scene has, or are there other big issues that you find in the console scene?
A previous term I mentioned, professionalism, is a big issue in the console scene because it's kind of an evil circle because people don't respect the console players if they don't play on console themselves.
Yeah.
Which results in them not caring about being professional because they don't even see us as athletes anyways. They don't see us as pros.
Yeah.
So why should we care? And that results in a lot of memeing and trolling that is in the very negative space. There's no positive memeing going around. It's like a bunch of people hating on each other and people not following rules, not reading rules, not following tournament rules, doing things that can get you disqualified, even though you're well knowing of the fact that can happen, like knowing the consequence and doing it anyways. There are so many small layers of, like you can just see the lack of professionalism in the scene. They need orgs to tell them how it works. They can't just know it themselves, just like the PC scene didn't know it themselves until orgs came in and told them how to do it.
Yeah. So, besides the kind of infancy in the scene, what do you think console really has to offer that PC doesn't offer at the moment, if anything?
My main attraction to the console scene is actually the way that they approach a common meta differently. And it results in many new ways of thinking about how to play the game. And I do think console players have a more creative mind when it comes to drafting and such, when it comes to meta. When there's a new meta, they try everything. On PC, they try the strongest ones due to the stats. Or that's what I normally notice. Like when there's a big buff on a certain champion, that's what's meta. But on console, it's about the small changes, like movement has been changed to be a bit faster or a little bit faster reload times, lower recoil, so on and so on. Like they are utilizing the game rather than just the champions.
And do you think
that's why I think they have more to offer than PC.
Do you think this is because console, in a way, is under more limitations than PC is?
Yeah, with limitations comes creativity.
Okay.
And when you have everything available as a player, it's harder to branch out rather than when you are stuck in a situation where you have to learn certain patterns.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Uh, well, lastly, I had a question which can be quite personal. You, as a member of the LGBT community, how does that affect you in Paladins, or does it even affect you at all? Is the community, is the esports scene welcoming, or do you still feel like people have a problem with it?
Uh, it's kind of funny you mention it because that's the first time it has ever come up, like being an LGBT member, because the Paladin scene has been really nice and really open and understanding. Like the whole start of the Paladin scene consisted of LGBTQ members
Mm-hmm.
most of the times. Like there were many that were transgender, there were so on and so on. There were many kind of avenues of identities and such, and
Mm-hmm.
it was like you were just one of the others. Like you didn't feel out of place, and even people that had a problem with it wouldn't really engage in you to
Yeah.
tell you that. Like people are to themselves, and that's what I liked so much, that I could go in and honestly tell people that I'm in a relationship with the same gender, and people just say, "Yeah, okay, well, yeah, why not? Whatever floats your boat."
Yeah. Would you say this was different in other games? Have you experienced negativity about your sexuality in other esports scenes?
It's definitely tough in the fighting game community lately because LGBT members are being a bit harassed because one of the strongest fighting game players in the world is
Mm-hmm.
a guy named Echo Fox, Sonic Fox playing for
Yes.
Echo Fox.
Yes. Yes.
Excuse me. And he is a homosexual furry who's black, and many people have been riled up and making a lot of talking a lot of bad stuff about him, and I don't think he deserves it because honestly, he is how he is. He's a human being, and he's better than you in multiple games. So show him some respect, boy.
Mm-hmm. That kind of concludes the interview. I'd like to thank you for your time. It was good speaking to you. If you have anything you want to plug, you can do. You can feel free to do it now.
Well, the only thing I really feel like I want to plug is, of course, the league we have mentioned earlier. You can follow Legacy League at Legacy League TV on Twitter. Very easily at Legacy League TV. We will cover a lot of esports. A new league is about to start on PC with Paladins, and we can't wait to show you a lot of awesome plays.
All right. It was good speaking to you, Woofie, and I
Right,
hope to speak to you again
right back
sometime.
at ya.